Hello, everyone. Good evening and a very warm welcome to this very special broadcast. We are coming to you on a day when satellite imagery, fresh satellite imagery, has been put out on the internet on various Twitter handles that is very clearly showing that the Chinese have built four dual use villages inside Bhutanese territory in Doklam. Now, Doklam, you do remember, was the site of a fierce standoff between India and China way back in 2017. That standoff had lasted almost 2 months, and the disengagement had happened only after there was a general agreement that since this is a disputed area, no side will be coming in or constructing any infrastructure here. But almost immediately as the disengagement took place, China had redoubled its efforts to entrench itself in Doklam, something that is very worrying for India, given that as far as India is concerned, Doklam is a strategic location. In a situation like this, where China and Bhutan are already in border talks, what can India do? Let me introduce my guest to you this evening. We'll have a 360-degree view of what is happening in Doklam and what the implications are for India. We have Prathikrit Pine, who's a strategic expert, joining us, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, a well-known face on television, doesn't need an introduction, and Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni joining us as well. General Kulkarni, let me start with you. I was just counting how many years it was. It has been since 2017, 4 years. And in exactly 4 years, China has managed to do exactly what they want to do, which means land grabbing almost 100 square kilometers of land inside Bhutanese territory. Why should India be worried? Because a lot of people can, stand back and question, this is a matter between China and Bhutan. Why should India get involved or get worried?
See, Shreya, what happens is you've confined yourself to saying only about 4 years. China has been doing exactly what it wants to do since 1940, slightly from 1950 onwards. Why just confine ourselves to the last 4 years? So that's first thing. Secondly, the Chinese do not want the border dispute to be settled. The very fact that they have border dispute settled with all countries, less two, that's Bhutan and India. And with Bhutan, they're already in negotiations. So the very fact that they're in negotiations with Bhutan and this entire area comes in Bhutan, but we have a treaty with Bhutan to say that we would defend them in all circumstances. And now with the kind of agreement that the Chinese seem to be going, we are not fully aware as to what are the technicalities of that particular agreement which is taking place between Bhutan and China at this point of time. But yes, this place, what happens is the Doklam Plateau can be addressed from Dokala, Batangla, then you have your Merugla, Sinchela, and where the Chinese activities are seen is along Merugla. Now, the Chumbi Valley is about 130 kilometers from the most strategic Siliguri corridor. Now, the Siliguri corridor, which is about 60 kilometers by 20 kilometers, that's the only one access and one railway line that goes and connects all the 7 northeast states. Now, if that is so, it obviously becomes very important for us to ensure. Now, with Chumbi just 130 kilometers, you can well imagine the kind of threats that have come being given from China to India when they moved their bombers from Beijing to Xinjiang to say that, well, we can take on Delhi. We don't want to take on Delhi, is a separate issue, but we can take on Delhi because those aircrafts can now take on missiles which have a range of 2,000 kilometers. So that's the kind of threat, that's the kind of pressure they want to put on India as much as they can. See, conventional war, even if I say it is ruled out, but these pressure points, and especially when you have Pakistan by your side, the kind of the understanding that they have Pakistan, they know that they are at a disadvantage vis-a-vis India when it comes to the Air Force is concerned, but they will well outsource the entire thing to Pakistan Air Force and say, okay, you do this, we do this, and the pressure on India must continue. Not just this, now with insurgency, you saw what happened in Manipur. You saw what happened at the PLA taking credit for what has happened over there. And the responsibility, the PLA doesn't mean the People's Liberation of Army of China, but definitely it's an arm of the number one. Not just that,
Oh,
it is being funded by the Kachin Independent Army from Myanmar. So there's a lot that we need to do to ensure that the Chinese don't get access to the Doklam Plateau, number one. Number two, to ensure the way the kind of activity is tunneling going on there, satellite images showing the infrastructure coming up there, the logistics being improved, the war material being moved in over there, the helipads coming up over there, the troops being acclimatized over there, the dual purpose infrastructure of living is coming up there. All these
sure.
are signs of concern that we need to be addressing, and we must be very, very vigilant because we cannot trust China at all. Yeah, sir.
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, come in here. The satellite pictures that we are seeing come out of Doklam, where 4 dual-use villages have been built, have come in today. But the fact is that ever since 2017, China has made its intentions as far as Doklam is concerned very clear. Immediately after the standoff ends, you see China start building infrastructure, roads, tunnels, etc. India has chosen to look the other way. Today, as these satellite pictures come out, go viral, is there anything India can really do? Uh, Given the fact that A, we are the net security providers to Bhutan, and we train the Bhutanese army.
Shreya, greetings and good to be on the program with you. It's a very tricky situation. We already have a standoff in eastern Ladakh. And now, since 2017, you're spot on. China has been very much present. And even when there was this so-called withdrawal or resolution of the Doklam issue, immediately thereafter reports started coming in that they have started rebuilding infrastructure, rather upgrading infrastructure. These reports of villages being built into about 2 kilometers into the Bhutanese territory are not new. Even last year, such reports had surfaced. But there are multiple challenges. One of which is that Bhutanese have been saying that no activity has happened in their territory. The Bhutanese ambassador in November 2020, Ambassador Namgyal, said categorically that there is no Chinese village inside Bhutan. So that is yet another challenge. And then Bhutan, is a sovereign nation. They have started asserting their sovereignty. They want their space. They have had 24 rounds of negotiations with the Chinese, and reports are that China has made them an offer of of not pressing the for the some pockets about 470 kilometers or 460 kilometers of territory in northern Bhutan. There are 2 valleys. If Doklam area is ceded, so it is a tricky call in every way, and creeping expansionism is the hallmark of China. As the general was saying, it's not now they have been doing that. They always deny and they expand. So that is the challenge. And Shreya, last point, we will see this grow, not shrink, because the land law the land boundary law that China has promulgated, in fact, enjoins upon PLA to set up dual-use villages. So we will, unfortunately, from our point of view, see many more of these. Shreya.
Pratik, come in here. Bhutan and China share a 477-kilometer border, which is disputed, much like the India-China border is disputed. And their border talks have been going on for a while as well. As Ambassador Vishnu Prakash is saying, there's some sort of a deal that clearly has been signed. We don't know whether the construction of these 4 dual villages, 3 to 4 kilometers inside Bhutanese territory, is part of that deal. But this really is fait accompli for Bhutan. Here you are, a tiny nation of 7 lakh people, 8 lakh people with not enough resources and people to guard your borders. Here is a big bully, a regional bully who's inside your territory and asking you to negotiate. In a situation like this, what does India do? What is the implication for India? And also India-Bhutanese relationships, which have been very, very good. As I said, we train their defense staff, we are their net security provider, etc. For China, Bhutan was really the last bastion. Nepal's taken, Maldives taken, Sri Lanka's taken. There was only Bhutan.
Well, sure. I think generally the problem, the difference between India and China is we actually don't put forward consequences that either you do this or you face this. The Chinese do that, and unfortunately, the world actually toe to the actually the foot of people who actually put those threats. Unfortunately, so I'll start with three very quick points. Number one, China has this five fingers of Tibet policy, which includes Ladakh, Sikkim, Arunachal, Bhutan, and Nepal. And they, as per the Chinese Communist Party, they think that it is their solemn right to liberate these places. So this is going to continue, and this has been continuing for a long time. Secondly, Xi Jinping has got another 5 years, so he is not going to stay here with all due respect like Manmohan Singh. He's going to do a lot of things. And Bhutan was like a low-hanging fruit for China, this one. So he is trying to show to the Indians that, look, we had a border dispute with the Bhutanese, and we have solved it. And look, here is a so-called belligerent country. They will project that India is the reason why the settlement with India is not happening. And this is as was rightly stated by the previous two honorable panelists, that this is the psychological aspect of the war that they keep on putting. Because let us understand, of all the countries with which China had border settlement, they were all unilateral. They were not mutual settlement of borders. The only country which has actually resisted has been India. And so there are problems that they're facing, and because of which they will keep the psychological ante very high. What India can do, number one, Bhutan as a country, yes, we have good relation. The question again is, Bhutan, as Ambassador Sir said, is also an independent sovereign country. They are thinking that, what the Chinese do, they psychologically devastate you so much before actually going for a war, that they don't need to go for a war because you give up beyond that. Before that, they expected India to do the same thing last year. Thankfully, we have the resilience and the conviction to go ahead and continue and be persistent, and the Chinese did not expect it. Now, the larger point, what India can do, look, I always believe this, that in 1996, when the Taiwan Strait crisis happened, China was humiliated by the carrier battle groups of United States. They waited patiently for 25 years, built their economy, where their economy can be used for military funding, where they weaponize their market, where they weaponize their technology to do whatever they want to do, because everything of China, whether it is economic, political, security, technological, social development, are mutually reinforcing to enhance the interest of Beijing. Now, for India, what is important to do, what are we giving to Nepal or Bhutan in return, or the other countries in return, apart from certain subsidies? It is important for India to also work patiently for the next 10 years to become a $10 trillion economy, where you can match the Chinese offer. It's not just about militarily countering China. It has to be something like a Belt and Road Initiative. It has to be something more than that, because eventually, even when these countries know that the Belt and Road Initiative is nothing but a debt trap diplomacy, and they're all getting into debt trap, for the sake of creating short-term infrastructure, they're agreeing to what the Chinese are saying. Last but not the least, they did it at a time when India was engaged, for protecting and securing its own borders. So there are limitations that India had. Eventually, if the Bhutanese don't want India to do anything, and they want to negotiate with the Chinese, there is very little that India can do beyond the point. But the broader thing, the real cause of concern is, will the Chinese stop there? No. The slicing strategy will continue. Once they have taken this place, they'll go for the next 100 kilometers. So this is where the problem is. And as I remember, once the National Security Advisor said that we will find our own ways to hit back at China, even though he did not say it in as many words, there are certain areas where China has its weak Achilles heel. The question is, why are we not exploiting those things? Whether it is improving relation with Taiwan, whether it is improving relation with Vietnam, and arming them. So if they will keep on arming the Pakistanis, they will do all these things in Nepal and Bhutan. What has stopped us from improving the relation with Taiwan? What has stopped us from relinquishing the one China policy? Nobody else has, but we have. So I think it is time that we change our structural approach when it comes to dealing with China, because you cannot deal with China the way you deal with other democratic countries, even Pakistan. China is a different ballgame altogether. China has no respect for ethics, and let's remember, the Chinese presidents don't look for global Nobel Peace Prize. They are completely unethical so far as it enhances Chinese interest. So the modus operandi has to change. Military formation, military fortification, military development, a lot has been done. Infrastructure development, a lot has been done in the last few years. We had a legacy of a scorching earth policy because of which we did not develop the infrastructure in the past. Things have been done in the last few years, but we have to work on developing a counter strategy which is very different from the way we deal with other countries.
All right. So you're saying the way we deal with democracies is not the way you need to deal with China, because they are a completely different ball game. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, come in here. Under Xi Jinping, China is now the world's richest country. It has beaten the United States of America. In China, they call him the Red Emperor, the chairman of everything. This is a man who thinks he needs to seal his legacy, the greatest leader that China has seen after Mao Zedong. And that will possibly come for Xi Jinping via Taiwan. Many people and commentators have been talking about the fact that possibly the way to China's reunification with Taiwan will come via India. How do you look at that statement or that worldview?
Sorry, can you clarify the last bit that it will come via India?
It will come via India, where you pressurize a large democracy like India in Eastern Ladakh and send a signal and a message to Taiwan that if this is how we deal with the Indians who are obviously larger and mightier and possibly richer than you, well, you are small fish. We can come bomb the hell out of you and an invasion, and the Americans will not be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting point. Could be so, but I don't see a direct link because, they have their own agenda vis-a-vis India. And embarrassing India is one of their planks that they are engaged in for a variety of reasons. But let me talk of Taiwan. The China clearly, in my estimation, is tightening the noose on Taiwan, and they find that the US is ambivalent. The US talks of that they strongly disapprove Chinese provocations against Taiwan, but also talk about standing by one China policy. The kind of war gaming, according to reports that are being done by China, to have an all-out attack on Taiwan, land, border, information, cyber, by sea, is not fantastic but realistic. Now, the only analysis or the only assessment that they have to make is whether or not the US will walk the talk and come to Taiwan's defense. Shreya, the problem is that US, even if they want to, they do not have a permanent naval fleet in the Taiwan Straits. They are at best in Guam or Okinawa. And by the time the US reacts, if they do, China may have presented a fait accompli. So the concerns are quite real. Xi Jinping, it is generally being assessed that his propensity of engaging in a conflict is much higher than what is thought. And he is, frankly, in my estimation, riding a tiger. Now, he has no checks on his power or very little checks. So if he goes into some kind of adventurism, I will not be surprised. I hope he does not, but knowing whatever one has seen of Xi Jinping is that he is biding his time and believes in China's greatness, and he may push the button.
He could push the button. The hot topic button between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping was Taiwan, and Taiwan has warned America that they are playing with fire, and if they play with fire, they will get burned. So it's not like the Chinese are getting intimidated by anyone anytime soon. General Kulkarni, India has not been intimidated by China, given what has happened 18 months ago. The talks are currently underway. The WMCC level talks are underway, in fact, as we speak. Possibly we will see a 14th Corps Commander level talk as well. Are you expecting these talks to go anywhere, or has the line of actual control changed forever? This is, these are the new realities on the ground in the LAC, and we just need to accept it.
Shreya, before I come to what you just asked, let me just give as a small this thing. China will not hesitate to use force to attain its political objective, especially when it comes to Xi Jinping, because Xi Jinping is in the mold of Mao Zedong, who believes that the power flows from the barrel of the gun. Just as a small thing, the Jinping Island of Taiwan was bombarded from 1958 till 1979, a period of 40 years plus, the longest artillery fire on an island, just to test the US willpower as to what can US do. And it did it every odd day without fail. 1958 till 1st of January 1979. Mao Zedong died in 1976. So you can well imagine what China can do to US to test its will for Taiwan is concerned. Well, I leave it to that because we've had enough talking on Taiwan. Now coming to what our talks are, whether our talks progress or not. See, China would not want to resolve this dispute. Let's be very, very honest about it. That they are not. If they were interested, they would have done it long back. The very fact that they are these negotiations, talking is entirely just to buy time, to gain time. What would have taken them years to do, to be able to do anything conventionally opposite India, they have succeeded in doing it in 2 hours. Because the amount of logistic infrastructure that has come up right opposite, whether it be roads, whether it be living conditions, whether it be war material, whether it is improving, acclimatizing troops by bringing them at higher altitude, taking them back, again bringing them, taking them back. The disadvantage, what is, as regards the logistics, they are now well said. Dual purposes, accommodation, well said. War material, already tucked into it. Now, all they require are 2 things. The will to do what they want to do, and of course, the morale of the troops. And that is where it's bothering China. So, the morale of their troops is not as yet they're very comfortable with. They can give them what you want, but you need to have boots on the ground. And that is where they're training. So let's not what they did in Longju in 1959. Well, 1962 they finally attacked. So all this is preparation for whatever they want to do. Whether they want to go in for it or not, they know that conventionally India can give them a bloody fight and that they will not be able to take it. That they know it. But there are other means, economic means, cyber, space, whole lot of things which are working on. Therefore, we have to work at it. We must not negotiate with China from a position of weakness at all. We must negotiate from a position of strength, because that is what China believes in. China did not negotiate with Great Britain all these years, 100, 150 years and 200 years, because they were in a position of strength to do with them. And that is what we must ensure, sir, that whatever we should care to who, we must ensure that we prepare ourselves.
I think India is also very clear that there will be no compromise solution or compromise formula. India has been asking for status quo ante in Eastern Ladakh, which means that the Chinese go back to where they were 18 months ago, and ultimately that is what they will settle for, which is why possibly these talks are not going any further or going forward. Although we will keep multiple rounds happen. And it's a good thing to keep your communication lines open, I guess. Pratik, before I end, let me come to you. China shares land borders with 14 countries, has territorial disputes with 18 countries. Not that they needed a new land border law to do exactly what they want and then legitimize it. But is this law more sinister than it lets on?
Well, on ground, it doesn't change much because they have been doing a lot of things even without this law itself. But frankly speaking, there are 2 things we have to understand about China. The Chinese philosophy has always been about hide your strength, bide your time. And secondly, the cost of failure in the higher echelon of the Communist Party of China is so huge that Xi Jinping cannot afford to lose from the Chinese perspective, or else he goes into obscurity, like his own father. So what the Chinese are trying to do is to institutionalize everything that they're trying to do illegally, and that's what they always do, like the 9-dash line. Now, I just want to add one thing about Taiwan and the connection with India. If the Chinese try to take Taiwan, the only reason the Americans will try to save Taiwan, it has nothing to do with democracy and anything else, but because 63% of the global semiconductor supply chain comes from Taiwan. So if the Taiwan is controlled by China, your entire world will be controlled by China. Secondly, if the Chinese know that if they go for a blockade of Taiwan or an amphibious invasion, in that case, there will be a blockade of Malacca Strait as a counter-strike by the Americans and its allies. There's a strong possibility. As part of a war game, I'm sure they've worked it out. As a counter to that blockade of the Malacca Strait, through which 80% of the trade goes. They have been working on the Gwadar Port, CPEC, Karakoram Highway connecting to Xinjiang province, and the Kwapko port in Myanmar. In these two areas, what is their concern? The Daulat Beg Oldie DSDBO road is very, very near to the Xinjiang province, and that is a concern of the Chinese, that is get threatened. So unless they secure those two lines, and in case of Kwapko, what happens? The Kaladan transport transit model that India is working on to bypass the Siliguri corridor, that is a model through Myanmar and connecting to Mizoram. These two areas, India has become an Achilles heel of China. So for them, over Taiwan and making sure, at least to a great extent, if not entirely, that the Malacca Strait blockade can be countered. They have to secure the Gwadar to Xinjiang corridor and the Kwapko to China corridor, and that is why for them the Depsang Pleng and the Depchang to prevent that construction of BRO on all the infrastructure from India is so very critical for them. So it's a long haul game. Ultimately, Shreya, it's all about who is willing to have more body bags. Are the Americans willing to, commit it all to save Taiwan? I don't think so, because the deep state of America is more interested in business with China, and they're talking about $200 billion of extra, material that the Chinese should take from the Americans. The only reason is a semiconductor, and for which the Americans can go to any extent. That's why there's a 2027 deadline that the Pentagon report has given. Till 2027, they might not do anything. But at the same time, before Xi Jinping ends his 5 years, he has to do something, or else he will be mocked and becomes a joke rather than being equated with Deng Xiaoping and Mao Zedong. Shreya.
All right, we leave it here. Thank you very much. This conversation has been very enlightening, very enriching as well. So I'm going to thank General Kulkarni for joining us, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Always good to have you on the show. And Pratik, thanks for joining us. We hopefully will keep having these conversations around questions of national security. Thank you very much for the moment.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.